Well, his house was removed from where the vehicles passed. As she walked, she realized that a mysterious man was following her. So, without knowing what to do, he decided to take a photograph with his cell phone and send it via WhatsApp to one of his colleagues. After this, she didn't answer anymore. When they went for her, they didn't find her hot. They searched the surroundings for the subject of the photograph. Upon discovering him, they decided to take justice into their own hands. Karina Blanco Duran, a cheerful and responsible girl, dreamed of being a psychologist. Weeks earlier, at San Francisco de Asís School in Playon, they had given him an interesting task: writing a life project. In her project, Karina revealed that she wanted to be a professional who helped others. One of his biggest dreams was to be able to buy a house for his mother, and to do this, he made an effort every day to go to school on a way that took him 40 minutes just to take transportation. His efforts were reflected in his grades. Her teachers remember her as a dedicated and disciplined girl who, despite living so far away, did not miss school. Karina was known to the people of Kashira. Everyone remembers her for being a very sweet and polite young woman. The girl walked a long way from 5:30 a.m. to be able to wait for the transportation that took her to her school. Her neighbors saw her come and go every day at the same time. Those who met her along the way greeted her cordially. Despite her young age and beauty, no one in her community disrespected her. Everyone looked out for each other. Perhaps for this reason, the Blanco family did not fear for the girl's integrity. Just days before his disappearance, a subject of Venezuelan origin named Alexander Carrillo, 55, had come to work on the farm, place where the young girl used to pass every day. She had put all her attention on her, but she tried to hide it so as not to arouse suspicion. The man knew the young woman's schedules and the days on which she traveled the lonely roads. Then he hatched a sinister plan to carry out his dark desires. Days before the incident, Alexander stared at her obsessively, and he didn't care that she realized his intentions. But still, Karina didn't tell her family any of this. He had the confidence to tell some of his friends at school what was going on. For a moment, the girl suggested that Alexander was just a gentleman who viewed her inappropriately, not realizing that he was in imminent danger despite this. The girl continued her journeys alone, without saying anything, since her mother and her family worked very early on the farms, and she had to be responsible on her own account. On May 3, 2022, Karina Blanco started her day as she did every day, getting up very early and leaving her house to go on a long walk to take transportation while she was traveling. The road was lonely as ever. Meters later, the young girl greeted one of the residents who knew her. The gentleman was not surprised to see her, since she passed by there every day. Shortly after, that same neighbor met Alexander, but it did not arouse his suspicions, since the subject worked nearby, in addition to the fact that everyone in the community took care of each other, and it never occurred to him that he was following the girl. Karina moved a little farther until a bad feeling flooded her. Nervously, she turned and realized they were following her. He tried to stay calm, but he was very afraid when he saw who was following in his footsteps. It was the same man who was looking at her inappropriately. Every time she was heading to her house, the subject tried to hide and walked a few meters away from her, trying to hide his face. But Karina tried to ask for help, took out her cell phone, and in terror took a photograph of the man. He immediately sent it to a friend of his and wrote to him, "They are following me." The partner, fearing for the girl's integrity, contacted her family and warned them what was happening, forwarding the photograph to them. The family immediately notified the neighbors of the community, and together they went to look for the subject in the photo. The workers indicated that he resembled Venezuelan Alexander Carrillo. Guided by the image, they desperately searched for Karina, but instead of finding her, they found Alexander, who had last seen her angry. The villagers cornered him and questioned him about the whereabouts of the young girl, seeing that they were armed with machetes and sticks. Alexander decided to tell the truth, confessed to them that he had abused Karina after having stabbed her, and finally threw her into the Kashira River, where he hoped she would disappear without leaving a trace. Hearing these words, the family and the villagers attacked him, beating him and shouting insults at him for what he had done. The authorities were alerted by the girl's disappearance and the man's confession, so they showed up at the scene trying to safeguard Alexander Carrillo's integrity. They put the subject in a vehicle and took him to a police station where he would be questioned, but people wanted to take justice into their own hands. They shouted that the man must suffer, just as Karina had suffered in her last moments. Because the community was so angry, the authorities chose to move to another site, Alexander. Then a resident crossed a truck in the middle of the road to prevent the perpetrator from being taken away and the incident from going unpunished. People began to attack the uniformed officers and were forced to move away from their vehicle. Then they watched as the girl's family and neighbors took Alexander and began to beat him. Armed with machetes and face coverings, attacking those who had just snatched an innocent young woman who was only going to her school, the police only managed to give the corresponding notice by radio, notifying that they had not been able to conclude their mission because the people had finished the subject by taking his life between blows. Supposedly, a relative of Karina's was the one who murdered him. The screams were the echo between the fury and the helplessness of having lost the young girl. Immediately, nearly 100 people mobilized to search for Karina's body, which was found in the village of Los Alpes. The first thing they saw was his backpack, and finally found it in the river on some stones in the middle of the current. The body had wounds on the chin, neck, chest, and one arm. The autopsy determined that he had been dead for about 6 hours, and that he had suffered abuse prior to his murder. The young woman's family was devastated. Her mother could not believe what her daughter had suffered and screamed that they would please take her life, because she wanted to leave with her despite having completed the enormous void that the young woman's attacker left, and the helplessness. Because of how he had suffered in his last moments, he did not leave the Blanco family alone. On 4th May, just hours after losing Karina, the community held a peaceful march, and at the girls' school, her classmates joined in a demonstration, remembering Karina and demanding from the authorities more security for young people who want to study and improve themselves and who do not have safe means of transport. To get home, as happened to Karina Blanco. Added to this, the girls demanded more femicides and respect for the integrity of women in the media. The case caused indignation, and the mayor was even questioned why a minor like Karina had to walk almost 1 hour to get to the stop where transportation could pick her up to go to school. His answer was that Karina was going by her own decision to a school that was very far away from her. Karina Blanco was a girl full of dreams, mainly of personal improvement and the goal of helping others with her knowledge. Her mother knew that her daughter's great dream was to buy her a house and give her a better life, thanks to her life project. However, filthy desires and an unscrupulous man